Wake up, Spartan, because your journey with the Master Chief and his never-ending battle to destroy the one true ring, destroy another one of the 7 rings in the universe is once again placed before us in this fight to save humanity and, well, frankly, save our AI overlords. Welcome back to Hoffman, everybody. I'm Brian, and this is our review series, Buy or Skip. Our goal here on Buy or Skip is that by the end of this video, you will have my opinion on enough information to know if you should buy or skip any given game. If you enjoyed this review and you find it helpful while you're watching, let us know in the comment section below. And if you're new here to Hoffman, think about subscribing to the channel and becoming part of our community. Alright, this is Halo Infinite, and here's my review. Halo Infinite is the 6th main release to the massive and influential Halo franchise. This installment is an open-world FPS that once again has you behind the helmet of the legendary Master Chief. Developed by 343 Industries and published by Xbox Game Studio, Infinite's multiplayer was released in November of 2021 and its campaign in early December of the same year after many contentious delays. If you would like to pick up Halo Infinite, you can find it on the Xbox Series X and S, the Xbox One, and additionally the PC, which, as a quick note, this review was played on the PC through the Xbox app. At a price point of $59.99, you will receive the main campaign, but it's also worthwhile to mention that as of this review, the Xbox's monthly subscription service Game Pass is providing the game to its members. Additionally, the multiplayer for Infinite is free to play, but also comes with a purchasable battle pass and a cosmetics store. That is a little bit on the pricey side. Let's begin our review with story. One of the largest reasons for Halo's success as a franchise is the massive and epic feeling sci-fi stories that it tells about the survival of the human race as it encounters the known and the unknowns of space. The main protagonist in these stories is Master Chief, a 7-foot-tall augmented human who has been conditioned from birth to be a weapon against any and all threats to the unified Earth government. But inside of this huge story of humanity's survival, there's a very tender and personal story between the Master Chief and his personal AI he starts out with, Cortana. The 6th installment of the main storyline of the franchise finds Master Chief again without and looking for Cortana. Opening up with the UNSC's Infinity in a battle with some savage brutes, the Master Chief seems to suffer the biggest loss we've ever seen for his character as he's left floating in space, defeated with the Infinity crashing down into Ring Zeta. The real story of the game picks up as Master Chief is found by a surviving pilot some months after the defeat of the Infinity. Finding their way down onto the ring, we now follow Master Chief in his mission to scavenge what is left of the Marines from the Infinity and stop the brutes and the Forerunner from activating this ring. A tale as old as time. Being Halo's first open world, I was absolutely nervous about how the narrative of this game was going to play out. One of the biggest selling points in my memory of Halo is this well-crafted story that sees Chief going from one point to the other with a strong set of set pieces and story beats. Open world in Halo Infinite does affect this, and it's going to vary for where per user and how you approach the open world games, right? My style in open world games is to get everything I can done in an area before I move on to the next. Every side mission, every collectible, armor piece, you name it, I want it before I'm leaving on to the next mission. This playstyle left me with long gaps in play between the story missions, and I could sense the lack of momentum working against me. At times, the story felt a bit convoluted and lost me because it had been so long since the last part of the story. I just couldn't feel like I was putting the pieces together. While the general sense of the story felt strong, it's these self-induced gaps that made it feel less memorable than the rest of the franchise I've previously played. As a sidebar real quick, for my sense of the overall story in this franchise, I've played every main FPS release of Halo excluding Halo 5. And this, as it turns out, is a fairly significant problem for the storytelling of this game because there are just huge chunks of knowledge that I feel like I was missing out on. If there is one game that I think you truly need to play in this franchise before Infinite, it would probably be Halo 5 Guardians. It just sets up so much of the base for this game and where the story is and what's trying to tell you as a player. I felt completely lost. I wish I would have tracked down a way to play this game before I did Infinite. You really do need to. Once I beat the game, I was able to go to Wikipedia and dig a little bit deeper into the overall story of the game. And I will say the story is pretty fantastic. I just had trouble keeping up with it while I was playing the actual game, probably because of what I did with the open world. Another quick critique about the story before we move on. If 343 decide to keep open world as a main feature in the Halo series, I would really like to see them expand on side missions to have more of an impact on me as a player. For the most part, the stories and these side missions are take place in recorded audio pieces that you find as collectibles. With games like Red Dead 2 in this industry, the bar is set too high for side missions to mean something to the main character, and I would love to see Master Chief being a more direct influence on the people in the Halo universe on this ring, outside of just commanding officers and the AI he's talking to in cutscenes. At times, the pacing of Halo Infinite's story can feel a bit off depending on how you play the game, but overall the story for Master Chief is pretty great, and one where we can actually see the Chief moving through different emotions throughout the game, and not just at the very end of it. Next up, Graphics. One of the largest things I saw from the community when 343 first started showing off this game was just how boring all the graphics looked. That it was flat, uninspired, and not worthy of something coming out in 2021. It felt more like something from 2015. This was such a heated response for gamers from its trailers that this alone in large part seems to be why the game was delayed so many times and just pushed back its launch all the way to December 2021. I forget when we were originally going to get the game, but it felt like a pretty long delay, and the graphics were about the main reason. If that time was spent on updating the graphics and making it feel more fresh, then the time was incredibly well spent. While there are games out there that on their surface look incredibly flashy and are ray tracing us out of our minds, Halo Infinite reaches an almost perfect balance of what looks like fantastic graphics and also graphics that are running at an incredibly steady and stable frame rate. Playing through this game, I couldn't help but get the sense that this game is actually a representation of where we are exactly in terms of graphics inside of the gaming industry. Everything is just incredibly detailed with high resolution textures that are so mind-blowing it feels like you reach out and touch them. The amount of assets that are on screen one time, the view distances that you can see around the ring, it's just staggering, but everything still is incredibly stable. While I feel many games try to cover up their imperfections with a lot of lighting effects and motion blur, Halo doesn't really need any of that. It's just solidly gorgeous to play in. The art team at 343 has decidedly placed you back inside of the Halo universe with the style of this game's art. With so many franchises out there for you to play through, there are a few that feel so distinctly themselves as Halo does. The cool tone grays and the saturated greens look amazing, and they don't feel old even for the hours that you spend inside of this world. With that said, the art team just doesn't rest on what they've done well in the past. As the game progresses, you are pulled through tons of new areas that really elevate what the Halo universe has to offer in its style. The Brute's architecture feels more jagged and almost demonic, and the ships that the Forerunners have built look more sci-fi and fantastic when they start getting like golden elements in them towards the end of the game. I just am in love with that art. I would love to see the concept artwork for that stuff. And with that, it really becomes one of the big standouts for me throughout this game is just how the different things build upon themselves as the game progresses towards the end. You really get a sense of progression in this story that I think has been lacking in Halo probably since its beginnings. Now lastly, for the graphics, I just want to mention how great the designs and animations for all the weapons are in the side of this game. For a game that's on its 6th installment of its main franchise, 343 and their artists have done just an absolute amazing job at keeping the guns of this game feeling pretty fresh to the series, but still feeling like, you know, they're at home within it. It's just, I love the gun design of this, especially stuff like the Ravager. It's just so cool to look at. Moving on, gameplay. As we've mentioned in this review previously, Halo Infinite is a bit of a departure from the normal on-rails nature of this franchise. Instead, 343 Industries, with their 6th installment in this main storyline of the game, decided to take Halo Infinite off these rails and crash land you right into the middle of a ring and let you go anywhere. Well, almost. Eventually you can go anywhere. Well, almost. Actually, that's a little bit of a lie. You can eventually go anywhere that's within the confines of the limited open world map that's on part of this ring, right? You can go to about like 25% of this ring, let's say. And to call it limited might give you the wrong implication because the map is big. It's not GTA big, but you can roam around quite a bit. There are 4 to 5 areas around this map that eventually open up to you as the game progresses. And this for me is one of the weaker aspects of the open world gameplay, where I'm much more of a fan of the Skyrim style, where, you know, it's kind of a fuck around to find out method of figuring out where not to go. But it does serve the story a bit better that you're not off on a 32-day bender at the College of Magic while there's still a ring to destroy. They kind of give you a little bit of bumpers to go, do this area, then we'll do a mission, and it opens up the next area, rinse and repeat, right? When it comes to the gameplay of Infinite single-player campaign, I can say it's just simply brilliant. They nailed every aspect of this game design I can think of. Every gun feels wholly unique and all have different purposes that serve the gameplay. You'll be trading out guns just to have fun with different playstyles throughout your entire playthrough. Additionally, they have introduced a system where all the guns of the game end up having an upgraded version of themselves, and they kind of augment how they operate, where kind of the battle rifle shoots a little bit faster, the shotgun has a bigger clip in it. In the 20-odd hours of playing Halo Infinite, I never once got bored with it in terms of like shooting things, or with it at all, but definitely not in the shooting. I was just wanting to kill stuff, find new ways to kill aliens. It was an absolute blast with the guns. To pair alongside of the gun throughout the game, you're going to find 5 different utility items that can be found throughout your story from different Spartans who were killed in line of duty. Each of these abilities can be upgraded through a light RPG currency system, and with a standout being the grappling hook. The amount of time you can spend just swinging around like Spider Chief is hilarious. Unlike previous Halo games that introduce utility items to use, in Halo Infinite you're able to use these abilities in combination during combat rather than having to swap them out one at a time. This gameplay feature allows you to string together all of these abilities to solve different combat situations throughout the game. Starting out feeling a bit weak, once you have all these abilities to combine together, you really get the sense that Master Chief is a real smart, just the top of the line, equipped for all situations. You'll be swinging with a grappling hook, dropping down a shield, and then dashing forward to slap somebody with a plasma sword all at the same time. It is so fun. This personal progression in a character is a huge step forward for the Halo franchise. And while this review is mainly focused on the single-player campaign aspects of Halo Infinite, I would be doing the community a large disservice by not pointing out the distinct lack of co-op in this game. Few games I play are ones that I wholeheartedly want to do with a friend by my side. I'm more of a solo gamer, but I've played Halo games in co-op for as long as I can remember. 343 does say that co-op is coming down the line, as well as a Forge for the multiplayer, but the lack of the co-op at launch is a huge bummer for myself and a tons of fans, and it's the only reason I can knock the gameplay. Where is the co-op? Finally, I want to wrap up the gameplay by talking a bit about the multiplayer. When I first started playing Halo Infinite's multiplayer, it was weird how refreshing its old style of combat felt. A more slowed down multiplayer experience goes decidedly against what is popular in the game franchises nowadays. Something like COD or Battlefield, everything's about speed, but Halo wants you to slow down a little bit and think. I spent hours addicted just playing this multiplayer, even on the unlimited amount of maps at launch. It was just super fun to play and just be in the Halo universe in multiplayer again. It's a good experience. And now that being said, the more you play, the more it begins to show how much work 343 has to do in the multiplayer experience itself. Outside of unfulfilling battle pass grinding and ridiculous price shops, the multiplayer servers that you play on are just not up to the caliber that the gameplay deserves. Countless times I could watch back clips of hit registration issues from my shots not hitting other players when they clearly did, and the dreaded death after you're already behind a wall. If Halo Infinite wants to keep in the conversation of games that you need to be playing in the FPS genre in multiplayer, then these aspects of that multiplayer experience need to be cleaned up, especially before 343 is forced to make a battle royale just to re-excite people about the Halo multiplayer experience. I'm sorry to say it, but eventually this might happen. Next category, sound. I think you could make a strong argument that out of all the franchises in the gaming, all the countless soundtracks and melodies that have been scored to these masterpieces of games that we've been playing, the sound of a choir singing the Halo theme is the most iconic sound we've ever had in gaming. This could be purely just my bias based on my personal nostalgia, absolutely, but every time I hear the Halo game open up, I'm transported back to a time in my youth that no other soundtrack is able to capture. In Halo Infinite, the composers and the sound engineers over at 343 Industries have massive expectations to live up to. And as someone who's recently played through almost the entirety of the Halo franchise, I honestly forgot just how metal and huge this franchise's music were. With Halo Infinite, they don't achieve the levels of melt your face off guitar riffing that the previous entries of the franchise were seeking, but what they do achieve is even better. You can tell right away that the score for this game has been elevated and matured to make it feel much more cinematic and almost more sci-fi in a way. Everything feels as if it's more atmospheric, and during the cinematics, the light touches of the Halo's main theme, those notes are always chiming in at the exact right moments to help the story impact you more. It's just amazing sound design. And when it comes to the sound effects of the game, they achieve the same levels of detail and praise that I would give the soundtrack. In the gaming world where we have heard pistols fire in so many different franchises, hell, even in this one, they still found a way to make these guns sound unique and better than anything before them. The sounds of your bullets hitting the enemy, when their shields break, and when you finish them off with a headshot, it's the best I think I've ever experienced in a video game. It's just so satisfying, truly. And I would beat myself up if we made it out of the sound section without giving an honorable mention to the writing team over at 343 with all the one-line quips that we hear from the grunts and the brutes as a shout out during this game, right? Even after all these years, they still find a way to come up with unique lines for the grunts to scream out right before their impending doom, they're running away from you. Everything it'll have you dead laughing. Sound in the Halo franchise has always been an absolute standout, even among the best in the industry. With Halo Infinite, 343 lives up to that legacy of sound quality within the Halo franchise, and it knocks it out of the park in every aspect of the game's sound. Finally, replayability. Out of all the FPS games that I've played throughout my life, there are very few of them that I felt the need to go back and play through a second or even a third time. Halo is the one franchise that has had me compelled enough to go back through and run it again and again. Whether it's a story, trying to find a hidden skull, or simply just putting myself through some self-abuse trying to finish the game on Legendary, I always find myself back in it again. especially when I'm running it with a friend. Halo Infinite is probably the first in the franchise that I don't have a ton of desire to go back through and try for a second time. When trying to dissect why I felt this way, I really feel it comes down to it being open world. I feel for the first time during a playthrough of Halo that I've fully gotten my fill of the game on its first run. Earlier in this review, I mentioned that I'm a bit of a completionist when it comes to the open world games. I like to seek out every little morsel of collectible that it has to offer, right? So by the time that I had killed all the side bosses, unlocked all the armor pieces, and rescued all the Marines around Ring Zeta, I'm just good. And I'm sure that not having co-op plays a large part in my desire to not want to go back and complete the game, but even apart from this, I really don't have a desire to go back and grab legendary runs like I did in the past. But that isn't to say that you can't. This game definitely has replayability, just not to me, right? There is a lot to do after your first run, and heck, even if people mainly stuck to the story of the game on their first run, they can jump back into that, collect everything they missed out on, and do it at their own pace. But for me, I'm probably holding off on my second run until co-op is introduced, and even then, I'm not really sure.
And what about you?
Buy or skip Halo Infinite. Single player FPSs always hold a special place in my heart. When the entire FPS genre feels like it's being lived online playing against another player, there are still franchises out there and games that show how much a first-person shooter still has to offer in a single player narrative. With graphics that are superb, gameplay that is best in class, and a fantastic return for one of gaming's best protagonists, I'm giving Halo Infinite a 9 out of 10, and you should absolutely buy it.
Get ready.
There is my review for Halo Infinite. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you found it helpful. If it did, make sure you leave a like on this video. Comment down below what you guys thought about Halo Infinite or what you thought about my review. If this is your first time here, you can also subscribe to the channel. We're going to have a lot more AAA game title reviews coming up. We also do reviews on my indie channel about indie games if you're interested in that. And real quick before I get out of here, I just want to mention my gameplay footage that I record cleanly while I'm streaming, like without my overlays and stuff and me talking, that got corrupted, and it kind of was a bummer. I didn't know what to do, so I pulled the video from Gameplay Only. That's a YouTube channel, so shout out to them. Thank you guys so much for putting up your videos cleanly on the internet for other people to use of Bungie's game. It's just it was really helpful to me. I leave their link down in the description down below for you guys to click on it if you want to check out their channel and give them the credit where it's due, because without them I had nothing. So thank you to that channel for putting up their clean review. That's gonna do it for this review. I'll see you guys on the next one, man. Bye everybody.